Hey, this is Candia Raquel, founder of Centro de Poder. You are at the Sensual Sessions podcast, the place to explore sensing pleasure through your senses and overcoming inhibition so you can express yourself through movement in a sensual way. So, in order to learn more about that, we have a special guest today. This is Robert Boyd, a frequent invitee to the Sensual Sessions podcast. So welcome, Robert, mathematician, dancer, drum player, Feldenkrais method practitioner, and Virgo being.
Thank you.
So
where shall we begin?
Tell us about sensual memory exploration.
Okay, so after our previous visits, it occurred to me for several reasons to come up with some provocative questions that anyone can use to reflect on experiences they've already had as a basis for exploring things they might want to do in the future to experience pleasant sensual experiences. There's so many ways, and like I have this incredible memory of the first time I had a really beautifully made gourmet taco that was perfectly spiced with cilantro.
Oh, delicious.
It made my mouth explode, and it was just such a special moment. It was I just couldn't stop wondering what was it that I was tasting. I'd had small doses of cilantro before, but never anything that just made my whole sensory apparatus light up. It was like, oh, give me more. And so one of the things I've been exposed to through the Feldenkrais community, there's a woman named Diana Whitney, who is also a Feldenkrais practitioner and also an expert in a field called Appreciative Inquiry. And, people use Appreciative Inquiry for a lot of things. They use it for organizational development as well as personal development. And one of the key questions that people are often asked to sit with is, so in your present circumstance, what are things that are working well or have worked well in the past that you would like more of? And so I started thinking of that in terms of sensual experiences at a very personal level. And so the more I thought about it, I think a lot of people would immediately go to sexually sensual, but there's so many fantastic experiences we can have. People talk about mountaintop experiences or something that happened at a retreat where they just felt overwhelmed with joy at some enlightenment that they experienced, a special moment connecting with someone. It could be a parent with a child. It could be, I don't know, I recently was reminded of the experience of sitting with someone who's dying. There's just something about that experience. It's difficult, it's challenging, and there's something special about it that we don't get in other settings. So I think, well, another aspect of exploring these questions is to begin thinking and approaching these questions with the thought of how I might choose to use what I learn from reflecting on these for choices I make in the future about things that I want and things that I don't want.
Yes, I want to
And
say something before we dive deeper, because this
okay,
background, I believe that it's so important, because we are so marketed and sold on over the top mountain experiences and
yeah,
like 10 orgasms in a row, and the unique holidays or the sacred moment of
yeah,
holding the hand of someone that you loved so much that
hmm
gone to heaven,
yeah,
because those are, yes, highlights in life, maybe moments that you will
yes,
never remember, but that's maybe the 1% of life.
yeah,
I believe that sensuality is about treasuring the 100% of life, not only the flabbergasting moments, but the
sure,
mundane, everyday, little tiny experiences. As a
hmm
cilantro, well, that was a highlight experience, the cilantro taco overdose. But I feel those like even milestone experiences have the function of reminding us
hmm
being alive here now,
yeah,
and not
yeah,
and
and
not expecting to live on that level of intensity every day. And I feel that's why it's so important to do this appreciative inquiry of
mhm,
knowing really what you didn't like, so to not stay there, and
yeah,
to recognize what you do like at a sensitive, sensorial, blissful pleasure way, so you can evoke more of that in our lives. And yes, indeed, people often equate sensuality to sexuality, but it goes, and I feel it should go hand in hand. But sensuality has the condition of pleasure for me. Sensuality means, here in Centro de Poder, sensing pleasure through your senses. Well, sexuality is a very clear neurochemical and physiological frame that,
hmm
especially for women, do not always, in a devastating over 50% of the cases, equate to pleasure.
mm,
So pleasure is a condition for sensuality, but sadly, it's not a condition for sexuality. You can have sex
sure,
without pleasure as a woman. As a man, if the guy comes and ejaculates, he's gonna have an orgasm, yes or yes. So it's very gender biased. And I believe that this idea that pleasure is found exclusively on sex has to do with this patriarchal view, because also women can and do enjoy sex even without reaching the orgasm. Like, the orgasm isn't and shouldn't be the goal, but like, because it doesn't always happen, being a
yeah,
like born as a woman. So this that you are about to talk about is relevant on so many ways, because I feel that pleasure is at the core of the experience of being alive, meaning that it's the first indicator of health. If you're feeling pain, it means that you have to get out of there. It's on the category of the things that you don't want more of. So it's important to learn of.
Yeah.
But culturally, we've been shamed in regards to pleasure. Well, pleasure is the greatest physiological bodily indicator of health. Like if you are delighting in your taco, that means it's full of nutrients. It's gonna that blissful taco, it's gonna make you faster, stronger, and better and more fit to survive. So it's a very biological evolutionary thing. Okay, having said that, please continue.
Oh, you're reminding me some things I've learned from a little bit of exposure I've had with the tantric approach to being present. And that's another area where most people associate tantric practices with sexual, but there's so much in that approach to experiencing life that's not about sex at all. It's quite possible to have an incredible experience just by being present in a particular way that's focused on being with our senses.
Yes.
And noticing small things. I had this wonderful experience this morning. I was outside looking at the plants in my garden, and I saw a tiny green lizard. And it ran across the ground, and then it ran up into a shrub, and it looked at me. and I had this moment of, oh, hi there. And it was just fantastic. And so,
Fantastic.
I would love to have more experiences like that
Yeah,
with the creatures.
and it's not like you buy a ticket to get one of those experiences that is very far away, where people get supposedly enlightened. Because also that pleasure don't operate very well on their fixed frames. Pleasure needs like a certain freedom to emerge, and curiosity. So you were already in this state of awareness, and then the lizard looked at you, and you were there to look back at the lizard.
Yeah.
Whereas if you weren't that aware, like, you would have missed that gift, that tiny gift of life. And I feel that the practice of becoming aware of sensual pleasure is exactly about this, about the pleasures in our daily mundane living, and the tiny pleasures and the tiny tiny experiences.
Yeah. If you like coffee, the first sip of coffee, when it hits your tongue and the aroma goes in your nose, and or chocolate, same kind of thing. Just appreciating the response of our system to the stimulation. It might be very small, but it can be so different if we just take a gulp of coffee than to sip it and to savor it.
Yes.
Or the chocolate, if we just are hungry for sugar and eat the chocolate in a hurry, there's no savoring of there's a kind of pleasure in it, but it's hurried. And to take the time to experience it, just like people experience wine or other aromatic experiences that are worth spending a little bit of time with instead of hurrying.
Taking the time, because sensitivity according to the Weber-Fechner law, requires dimming the intensity and expanding the length.
Mhm.
Of the stimuli.
Yeah. Yes, there are there's some peak experiences that involve fast, intense stimulation, but like you said, we can't really be doing those constantly. Not only because it's difficult, but it's also exhausting to be in that highly stimulated state all the time. So are there any of my questions that you want to particularly talk about or focus on?
Yes, tell us your questions of Appreciative Inquiry.
Okay, so keeping in mind the kinds of things we've both been mentioning, whenever considering the questions that I've posed, it's important to think in terms of memories of any sensory experience: sights, smells, sounds, touch, taste, sexual, or even like feeling a presence of something that might be hard to put a finger on, but anything that makes up the sensory whole of the experience. So the other thing I want to say is that these questions are intended not to focus on creating peak experiences, but to find out, to build a personal catalog of things that make experiences pleasurable for yourself. So what is it that I like that makes me feel good? And then when I know these things, then it's one way of thinking about it is that from our experiences, we collect data. And as we collect the data and think about all the data we have, then we begin to develop what I would describe as information from it. And then when we make a decision to do things based on what we've concluded from the information, then we transition into developing wisdom, because we're making choices based on data rather than outside influences. I mean, outside influences can be helpful, but nobody outside of one of us can tell us what we should or shouldn't be enjoying, because they're not living in our body. We each have our own flavors of life that mean something to us.
Yes.
So to me, it's important to develop our own sense of choosing the things that produce value. So how about if I just go through the first paragraph? So again, thinking in terms of any of our senses, think of a most thrilling sensual experience you've ever had, a moment that just stands out in brilliant colors, incredible aromas, a sense of touch of something, music, something auditory, or a place that just had a certain magical to it, or being with a particular person, something about just being in their presence created some sort of special feeling. And then what I would invite to do with that memory is to recall details of that experience and recall them in vivid detail, and then ask what made that experience so thrilling. And was there anything before that moment that actually heightened the experience that you can think of? So it's thinking of the before, during, and following, and what is it about that experience that suppose you could never have that experience again, but what quality of that experience would you like to have more of in some way? So and the more I thought about this question myself, there are so many wonderful experiences I've had where I can think about them and realize that over time I've gradually been making choices more and more for the things that feed me and less of the things that take something away. So for me, realizing that something important for me is making connections with people, and realizing that a lot of my life I didn't really realize how important that was for me, and that it's something that I continue to practice being more aware of as I continue, so that I choose more of that instead of less.
Choose more instead of less.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's, I think it would be wonderful if life could be so simple that we could always be choosing the things that are wonderful. And I suppose some people succeed more at that than others, but life is extremely variable. Things happen, we get hurt, people we know get hurt, we have losses of various kinds.
Yes, but
We get sick.
that is in the category of the things we cannot choose, because accidents.
Exactly. So,
but there's a trap to believe that we have no choice, and we do have. Of course,
yeah.
there are the
So,
exceptions and the instances, those are accidents, but the rest of life has to do with choosing, and the base for choosing is responsibility. Because if an accident happens, or you lost, or whatever, it's something that happened to you. You are not the author. You don't have responsibility. And even there are beautiful gifts that also, you won the lottery. Yes, you bought the ticket, but like it's 1 in a million. But most of our lifetime is made of the little moments and the little experiences that we have an active participation in them by choosing more of those.
mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think the point I was trying to make is pretty close to what you just said. Just that regardless of what's happening that we have no choice about, we can be mindful of the things that bring us sensual pleasure and joy, and be finding ways to take responsibility for bringing that into our life. And I guess guiding our journey to choose the things that make us happy instead of being completely driven by circumstance.
Yes, instead of being completely driven by circumstances. Yeah, that's why, in a way, sensual pleasure is for adults. I mean, when it's delivered, when it's not just like a playful exploration, like when you are rolling in the mud or in sandbox when you're little, that is a highly sensual experience. I mean, for me, that's the ideal state. But we grow up, and the thing is, to really grow up, to really be responsible of your desire, and creating the things that support that desire to become the experience that satisfies this desire through pleasure. Yes.
Correct.
Yes, Robert, tell us more about your sensual inquiry questions.
Okay. Okay, so
just a quick note for the audience. All of this is on the description of this episode. If you're on Spotify, you can click and read Robert questions, or YouTube. It's the same.
Ah, great. Okay, so sensation, one of the next paragraphs the questions that I put together is to think about one or two most thrilling sensual experiences that you've ever had, and meditate for a moment on them.
What was your most thrilling sensual experience? Of course, you can keep it to yourself if it's private.
I have one that I'm there. There's many that I can draw from. One that was just extremely thrilling was one time a few years ago with a group of men who went on a ropes course, and I partnered with someone in the group. Well, we all had to form partners, and the man I partnered with, we both chose to do the ropes course blindfolded. So with assistance, we climbed up to 80 feet in the air in the trees on the course, and we went through the course completely while being blindfolded. And then at the end of the course, well, that was pretty thrilling. And then the end of the course, the way you come back down is unless you don't like it, you go down a zip line from 80, 90 feet up in the air. And the people running the course invited us, if we felt okay doing it, to go down the zip line blindfolded. And I had previously seen someone do it hanging upside down on the zip line and blindfolded, and I decided to do it.
Oh, you decided to do it?
Yeah. So I flew down on the zip line blindfolded, and it was incredible.
It was incredible.
It was overwhelmingly fun. It was just scary enough to create a lot of feeling of excitement, but the feeling of flying through the air but knowing that I was safe created a very thrilling internal experience. The wind from the air as I flew down, hearing people's voices, people cheering, and then that moment of coming to a stop and just sort of being in the adrenaline rush of the whole thing. That's a very potent memory in my mind. I could probably list off easily 10 or 20 experiences I've had in my life that all have some unique, thrilling flavor. There's also a number of experiences I could talk about that were, instead of thrilling, were what I would describe as deeply satisfying. That's more what the second paragraph is about.
Yes, yes. Tell us about that second paragraph.
Yeah, so I suppose maybe not everyone, but most people have had at least some experience of something that just felt really deeply satisfying. It might be music, it might be some kind of a place that just feels special. It could be something with touch, like a really great massage, or I just recently tried a flotation spa that was, I don't know if I would describe it as a peak satisfying experience, but I definitely want more of it. Sitting in a boat or a canoe on the water, just feeling the movement of the waves and just taking in the experience of the potency of the water and the life in the water and the air around.
I feel
so many. I mean,
I feel sensuality has this quality of being an experience that somehow emerges in a safe but non-linear context. Like,
yeah.
Being floating, you are safe, but like it's not that it's step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, whatever. And
yeah,
you're on the canoe floating, and yes, there's a rhythm to the waves and the wind and the everythingness of the moment, but it's non-conceptual. So sensuality is an experience of being both unbound and undone. It's not closed, but
yeah,
it's an open, unfolding experience of pleasure. So tell us more questions.
Okay. So in terms of having a, my question would be, how would you describe, as you meditate on it, how would you describe what it was that you felt from it? And then also, what would you say contributed the most to making it such a satisfying experience? And was there something about it that lasted well beyond the moment of the experience? Did you find something that resonated for some period of time? And what qualities from that experience would you want to experience again somewhere, sometime? And like you said, it might come unexpected.
Yes, and I like this reflection on what was the elements that you can recall from the experience, not to duplicate it, but
yeah.
to learn how to be better at cultivating sensuality.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not
Yeah.
that you're gonna make the waves.
Some people love to go for walks in.
Yeah, so it's not that you're gonna make the sea flow on your rhythm. It's about becoming a better saver of your own pleasure.
Yeah. Yeah. I recently had a friend tell me how much they love being out in nature and like going for a walk in the woods and just seeing what they experience there. Sometimes it might just be a walk in the woods, but other times something happens and they might experience certain animals being around, birdsong or squirrels or other creatures that they might see or hear. Some people have told me about just really loving, like taking a picnic to a sunny meadow and sitting in the grass and having the sun on them and enjoying the food and the sun and the rustling of the breeze. And it might not always be magical, but putting themselves in a situation that they know can have that kind of sensually feeding quality to it, they have a better chance of having moments like that. If someone knows that those experiences can feel that good, but they never put themselves in that experience, all they have is memory.
Yeah. So why not putting yourself back into those experiences? Like,
Yeah.
like naked, that was my subconscious betraying me. So I was gonna say that, how you like to be in nature, and I said you like to be naked. Well, whatever, if you like to be naked in nature, just make sure
Yeah.
it is your yard. But that, don't keep yourself from that. It's part of the responsibility of an adult.
Yes. Yes, it's quite different shifting from childhood into adulthood and taking responsibility
For pleasure.
and accepting the responsibility. Yeah.
Yeah, because the responsibility we take for our bills and loans and ills and stuff, like maybe it's not even you taking responsibility, it's like culture and society making you under the threat of social shaming. But pleasure, like, we have the same cultural pressure against pleasure if it's not through a financial transaction. Like, if you didn't pay for the chocolate, then you don't, like, we don't even talk about pleasure. If you don't go on vacations, like, and no, like, you don't have to pay for pleasure. Pleasure, it's not a product, it's your birthright.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, what are you gonna do about it? What you can do
Yeah.
is answer these questions that Rob is sharing with us. So we're ready to paragraph 3, for paragraph 3.
Okay, sure. So another aspect of sensual pleasure is, and I'm going to use a little bit of I guess what I would describe as a hot word, arousal.
Well, that is a hard word, and I want to make a little disclaimer
Okay.
that Arousal by itself, physiologically, refers to a change in the brain chemistry, in the heartbeat, breathing range, and the hormonal stuff. So arousal has to do strictly with sexuality, and I feel it's very important that you become aware of what creates the state of arousal in you that makes you be ready to go for sex. and be mindful to pair arousal with the emerging of sensuality, that it's just a word that I have just invented to make an equivalent for sensuality, because how I talk about sensuality is in a non-arousal way, like breastfeeding can be a sensual experience for the baby that is sucking the nipple of the mother, and for the mother to feed the baby. And a lot of friends have told me that it's a very pleasurable experience to feed the baby, and it's part of these survival mechanisms of being pleasure driven, which is very different than being an adult and, I don't know, kissing the breasts of your beloved or the nipples of whatever. And the difference is arousal or non-arousal, and I feel it has to go together. The sensual pleasure and sexual pleasure. So I don't know if you were gonna talk about sexuality, but I want to make like this.
So I want to
clarification.
Yeah. So that's all very good and
That's all very good.
appropriate. And there's another aspect to sensuality that if you've ever been like at a musical performance or a dance performance where there was something that happened that got exciting, it didn't have to be sexual, but there's a process of building that excitement. If you think about something like the 1812 overture or certain rock music or a thrilling dance where it starts quietly, but then something magical where just incredible feats are performed by the dancers.
Yes, you get turned on.
Or just a special moment where like two dancers have been dancing and then they come together.
Yes, or the lizard, like, hey there, that moment.
Yeah.
That makes you feel, you get a felt sense of yourself immersed in that situation.
Yeah. So, or with food, there might be something in the process of preparing food that creates a certain kind of arousal, because as the spices begin to cook and the aromas of the vegetables or the meat or sauces begin to emerge, there's typically some sort of arousal, sense of anticipation of enjoying the taste of the food when it's fully prepared. Setting the table for a fancy dinner. The process of setting the table and seeing it ready creates a sense of some sort of expectation and heightened awareness. And that's what I'm talking about arousal. It's when there's something going on that's focusing attention towards some sensual experience.
Yes.
And then, so my question regarding that is, if you have your choice about ways that you like to be sensually aroused, what are those ways that you like to be aroused? Some people are very, I have friends who are very easily disturbed by sounds. So going to an auditorium and experiencing a nice concert is not particularly fun for them.
Okay,
But for me, it's great.
it's
I
great.
love it. Yeah. So there's something about being in the crowd and seeing the performers setting up on stage and people doing the lighting. All of that is a kind of arousal. Whereas my friends that can easily be sensorially overloaded, to them that's not pleasurable. It's disturbing.
Yeah,
So for each of us, we have we can have a sense of ways that we enjoy being aroused sensually.
yes, because you are pointing out to something fundamental, that is singularity. The pleasure is singular. What you like, it's gonna be different than what the neighbor likes. And even if you are all together in the
Yeah.
concert because you get turned on in that experience and etc., the way that
Yeah.
one processes the experience, it's gonna be unique. Pleasure, pleasure, it's singular.
Yeah.
And the experience, the expression of that pleasure, that sensual way of moving, it's just as singular to you as your fingerprint. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why it doesn't work to get like, try to get turned on by
Mm-hmm.
what turns on the other people. Like, yeah, go ahead and try everything, but do wonder what is that you like, what turns you on, and then
Exactly.
do more of that.
Yes. Yeah. I just had a thought come about where different people are aroused differently. I've heard people tell stories about like their dad being really big with going to the lake and having a boat and water skiing. And so they get all excited to get the family together to go to the lake and do all the lake things. But one of the kids just really doesn't like that. So while the dad is getting all aroused emotionally about an exciting day at the lake, the child is going, "Oh no, again, I hate going to the lake. I don't want to do this. You're making me go, blah, blah, blah." And so I
Yeah,
think it's also important
yeah,
to,
never bargain on pleasure. That's something where no prisoners could be taken. Like, in a way, pleasure, I feel sensual pleasure is my way or the highway, because you cannot fake it. It's not a task to mark as completed.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
something that really has to do with what happens to you.
yeah,
The same as love, you cannot fake that. You cannot force yourself to love someone that you don't love. And in the same way that you cannot force yourself to not love whom you love. There are ways to put up with that and continue living somehow, but it's not that you can make it happen. So never bargain
yeah,
for pleasure, never try to comply to the desire of
yeah,
others. Though you can very well let yourself be taken as a pleasure object of the desire of the other for their pleasure, that I feel it's important in relationships. And in the same way that it's important that you allow yourself to let your desire be invented in the other. I am referring to this in the context of Lacanian psychoanalysis, and I personally feel this pretty much real and descriptive of what goes on. But yeah, basically, like, if your dad or your beloved wants to take you to the lake and you don't want to go, like, maybe you can go, but go being aware that you are doing that to support the pleasure of the other person, not to bypass your own pleasure. Like, okay, I'm not into
Yes.
it, but I am doing this for you as a gift, for you as an offering, and I need
Yes,
to get
exactly.
my pleasure this way, and hopefully we can both meet and go to a place that is a meeting point of mutual desire, sensual pleasure, and satisfaction.
Yeah. Another
Paragraph 4.
another thing. Well, okay, one more question about arousal. I would invite everyone to think about experiences where something became arousing where didn't exactly expect it. Some situation where you went into it, it seemed interesting, and you thought it might be pleasurable, but then something happened that you really didn't anticipate that made it even more arousing than you expected. One of my favorite experiences like that was the first time that I went to see two master musicians from India play, where the show was divided into three parts. One master played his instrument, and then the second master played his instrument for a while, and then they started giving each other sequences to play back and forth. So it was like, I'm going to play this and you play it back, and you play something for me and I'll play it back. And this is a traditional thing between Indian music masters. It could be on any instrument. And so the first time that I saw this, it was a tabla player, a master tabla player from the north of India, and a mridangam drum player from South India. And they did this, they played each of their parts of the show, and it was wonderful. And then they started doing the back and forth, and I had no idea this was coming. But there was this moment where they were playing faster and faster back and forth. And then my brain almost melted when I realized that they had gotten to the place where they were both playing together, improvising.
Wow.
And it was just, it
Wow.
was
Magical.
And yeah, it was very magical because I didn't know this was a thing. So I stepped out of my cultural experiences into theirs. And
yeah, but still, like, even if you knew it was a thing, that's like fantastic.
yeah. So since then, I've gotten to experience musicians from India doing that maybe 2 or 3 more times. And it's not quite as mind-blowing as that first time, but it's extremely pleasurable for me.
Yes, extremely pleasurable. Yeah, it doesn't have to be mind-blowing in order for it to be extremely pleasurable.
Yeah. But that's in my repertoire of something that I know that arouses me, that I will, if I have an opportunity to experience it again, I'll go do it.
Yeah, very important. Make a pleasure repertoire.
Yeah. So the last paragraph that I put together is a question of fantasy. And many of us, through reading or hearing stories from other people, or in our just own making up things, the question is, are there any situations or places that you've come to enjoy fantasizing about that have a strong sensual content of some sort? And like I said, it could be any sense. It could be smells, taste, sounds, touch. And I include this touch, like if you're in the water or you feel a breeze, that's all kind of touch sensation.
Fantasy.
Yeah. Yeah. So is there something that has a strong sensual content in fantasy for you that might be beyond something that you've ever felt safe or able to experience, either alone or with other people? It's funny, you mentioned naked earlier. I've heard people
Nature.
joke about, I've heard people joke about wanting to go to a colony or a nude beach, but they don't really feel safe doing it, but they fantasize about it. So the question that I came up with is, what is it about that place or situation makes the fantasy sensually stimulating? And to take it one step further, how would it make you feel to describe the fantasy to someone that you trusted to listen to your fantasy and the sensations you get from it, if you knew that that person would not pressure you into trying to do something about it or criticize you or anything, just be present with you to witness what that means for you? And I think that kind of, it's not really time to go into this more in great depth right now, but the whole concept of sensual pleasure being witnessed or in the presence of others as opposed to alone.
Yes. Yes. Yes, that's another layer.
To me, there's something often more meaningful when it's a shared experience.
It is.
It might not be the same experience for
It
everyone, but
it might not be the same experience, because when you're sharing it with other, it's a shared experience. But it emerged from what's going on in you as a source,
yes,
or how you are welcoming the atmosphere, the other, whatever, that elicits a response. You so it's permeated by how you engage. But yeah, that's like the next level. Shared sensuality. Fantastic. Fantastic, inquisitive, sensual inquiry to get more of what makes you delight in pleasure.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you so much, Robert. Yeah, I feel
So I appreciate the opportunity to share that with you.
Yeah, such a pleasure and an honor. This is a very practical guide to inquire what sensual pleasure means to every one of us in a safe way, and and an invitation to take responsibility on one's desire for pleasure as an adult. In such a way that enriches life. So tell us, how can we know more about your work and what you're doing?
Well, to some extent, you can find out more about it through my website, trianglefeldenkrais.com, which tells some of how I got involved with and what's special to me about that work. I see people individually, and I also sometimes teach remote. And I would say, sort of as a overall, I also enjoy engaging sometimes with something called interplay, which is a particular way of experiencing creative activities through movement, music, storytelling, either alone or in a group. There are a lot of interplay communities in different places nowadays. I got introduced to it many years ago, and I'm still connected with a number of people who do that and enjoy involving in that. That's something, and I invite people to check out if it's something available in a community near you.
Interplay communities.
I think, yeah. If you go to, I believe the main interplay website is interplay.org, and from there you can find where there are communities around the world. Maybe in some surprising places where you might not expect. I'd say there's a high degree of what people experience with interplay that is about sensual experience and pleasure, creating alone or creating in community, experiencing other people's creativity, the sensuality of play together in a safe setting. That's been an important thing for me. I think if anyone chooses to engage with me through the Feldenkrais work, one of the things that's really important to me is to be present with them, listen carefully to them, and help them possible the things that they're wanting more of, that they may be finding themselves blocked from due to various circumstances. And ultimately to help them find more joy in their life by freeing their movement and possibilities.
Find more joy in life by connecting with Robert Boyd at trianglefeldenkrais.com. Thank you so much, Robert, and thank you,
You're welcome,
for being here. And if you haven't subscribed already, please go to www.centrodepoder.com and get yourself signed up to get the Sensual Sessions podcast episodes delivered on your inbox weekly. And until next time, remember to sense your fire so you can share the flame.